Hello, everyone, and welcome to Never Miss a Monday. I'm thrilled to have Vanessa Fontana on the show today. Vanessa is a writer, podcast host, and entrepreneur committed to guiding individuals through the complex and beautiful journey of personal discovery. With her background in business at the cutting edge of tech and AI, she stepped away from the corporate scene to forge her unique path. She has cultivated a global audience through her podcast, Figuring Shit Out, where she employs language, her voice, and community to promote profound self-reflection and unleash creative freedom. A certified yoga teacher and business mentor, she sits at the intersection of strategy and soul, helping 20-somethings, creatives, and anyone on their journey of self-discovery and inner awakening create a safe space for themselves to align their vision and step into their fullest expression. I love that, Vanessa. I'm so happy to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you for having me.
It's so my pleasure. And I love that you're a New Yorker. We were just talking. My best friend lived in New York for so long. And I love that you said that you're from Florida and then you moved to New York, which is so opposite. I always hear about everyone like escaping the like hot summers and, going to Florida. What made you decide to move to New York from Florida?
Oh my goodness. I always knew I wanted to live in New York. My dad is from New York originally,
Oh,
but I was
whereabouts?
always he's from Long Island.
Okay.
He was born in Queens. He grew up on Long Island. So I grew up kind of going back and forth. And I used to tell people that I was from New York because I always felt like I was from New York. I never felt
Uh-huh.
like I was from Florida. And I always had a pull to New York City. And I grew up pretty much trying to escape Florida in every way possible. So it's really funny that you actually used that word escape the winters and go to Florida because
Yes.
I grew up just like wanting to get out. So I always knew I'd be here. When I turned 18, I went to a SUNY upstate. I went to Binghamton. So I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I knew where I wanted to be, which was New York City. I didn't actually want to be upstate in the middle of nowhere. But
Yes,
that's what
absolutely.
ended up happening, and it happened for the best reason possible, I think, to lead me here when I was ready. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Well, so part of my story that I really don't talk about much is I was very close to moving to New York City as well. So my father was born in the Bronx in 1943, and he was there for 2.5 years before his family moved out to Los Angeles in the Valley. But if you talk to him now, he still has a little bit of like a New York accent. And even though he left before he could like barely talk, he's like, I'm a New Yorker, I'm a Yankees fan. And, he would go back in the summers. And my best friend, who's a Broadway performer, and we grew up together singing and dancing, and we lived together first year of college in Santa Monica, and she got on the national tour of Rent. So she started touring, and then she landed in New York, went to NYU, and she never came back. She's still living there, and she's flourishing and doing so amazing. And at one point, I kind of wanted to kind of put everything in storage, which I did. And I was like, I'm moving to New York. If I'm going to do Broadway, it's got to be now. Unfortunately, the timing of the universe with the recession in 2000, it was like 2008, all the theaters shut down. And it was a really scary time for just even stars of Broadway shows couldn't get anything. And so my best friend was like, Stace, you can struggle at home or you can struggle here without family. Like the choice is yours. So I ended up never going. And it was my dream to be on Broadway. But honestly, I kind of feel like watching my best friend flourish on Broadway kind of fed that, like that was her calling. My calling was very different. But I just love to hear why people end up in New York City because all the stories are so unique and powerful. And do you love it?
I have such mixed feelings about it, honestly. Like, I think it was my calling to come here. And since I've been here, I've been figuring out why. Why? And when I got here for the first year, I was like, okay, what was the pull? I don't quite understand because it's such a confusing place. It's so chaotic, but there's something about the energy and the urgency that is nearly addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a deep part of my path in this life to learn how to be calm in the face of storms. And New York is like the biggest storm that there could be in a city. And every time I leave it, I find myself just knowing that it's my home and knowing that it always has been. So I feel that it chose me and I didn't really choose it. And I have this really like complex relationship with it because you see so much here. Like it can be a muse and an inspiration, but it can also be the cause of so much sadness because there is so much sadness. You look and you see everything in this city. So it's like a great metaphor for life in a way. It's really like you have to be so focused on what you're looking for and what your intention is, or you will just get kind of drowned out in the storm of everything because everything exists here. So I have a really complicated relationship with it in that way, but I love it deeply the way that I love like a family member who I have a hard time with, you know?
Yes. Were you there during the pandemic, living in the city?
I wasn't, no, but I moved right after the pandemic. So things were still kind of weird.
Right. I was thinking like at the beginning of the pandemic, the governor was like, he was on the news all the time and it was almost like a beacon of hope. I was like, God, if New Yorkers can get through this isolating time where some don't even have windows in their like apartments, God bless the fact that I have a backyard that I can go out. And I was just like thinking like, oh my God. And that's another thing, like, you know, COVID can spread so quickly because of how close knit everything is, the transportation, everything. And watching New York get through such a devastating time, I think gave a lot of hope, to be honest. And, you know, with your podcast, I'm a huge fan, Vanessa. I started listening. I love your episodes. I love your message. It's just beautiful. So in Figuring Shit Out, you talk about taking the leap, quitting corporate America, corporate hustle, and really embracing a creative life. When did this happen for you? Like, did you have like a light bulb, like aha moment?
Oh my gosh, I feel like my whole life led up to what I'm doing right now. It wasn't an aha light bulb moment. It was always just like this light within me that I wanted to ignore. And for so long, I tried to ignore. So a little bit of a background. I grew up in Florida. I grew up in kind of a chaotic household. So that was sort of the precipice for me being like, I'm getting out of here. I'm carving my own path. I've always been like very independent in that way and knowing that if there's something to be done, I will do it myself. Like if there is a path to be carved, like I got it, I'll do it. And so that hyper independence led me to wanting to, you know, move out of the state as soon as I turned 18, as soon as I could, but do it right. Like my dad instilled in me, like, okay, if you want to get out of here, but like do it right, do it the right way. Always be logical. Always, you know, think about the right path or the path that's going to carve out the most sustainable way forward. And so that was really good advice, but it also led me to shut off a lot of my natural desires and my natural urges, which were always creative. I was a writer all the way through elementary school, middle school, high school. I would submit poetry under an alias because I was too scared to be seen with my actual name. I remember I did this poetry slam, and I spoke in front of an entire group of people in ninth grade, and my English professor or teacher, I guess he was a teacher, he like slid me this card and I still have it to this day and I look at it all the time, and he was like, you are like meant to write and to be doing this. I don't know what you want to do with your life, but this is like, you're meant to do this. And it was just him offering guidance for me and telling me that that's what he saw in me. And I always knew that I wanted to write and I wanted to speak, but I was so shy and I was so like covered up in my little corridor. So my whole thing was, I got to get out of here. I got to do it right. And I have to figure out a way to make this work. And so I spent my whole life doing really well in school, trying to figure out how to make it work. I get to college, this college that I didn't want to go to in the middle of nowhere. The reason I ended up there was because the colleges in the city, as you know, are really expensive and none of them offered me any money. And I spent this whole time thinking, I'm leaving Florida. I'm going to go to New York City. And then I got like the bill and I was like, oh, how am I going to pay for this? And my dad was like, you're not going into $200,000 worth of debt for a journalism degree, Vanessa. And I was like, why not? And so I ended up going to his alma mater, Binghamton, and I ended up staying there for a few years. Because when I got there, they were like, oh, by the way, all that stuff you did in high school, the AP classes, the college courses, like, you're already halfway done with your degree.
Wow.
That freaked me out. And so I switched my major to business and I started focusing on business. I went to their management school just because it was like the best school that they had there. It was like the best education I knew I could get at that school, it's a great school, but it had just a very catered curriculum. And I got to college and I realized like this writing thing, if I do this for a living or if I study this in this way, this is going to eat me alive and it's going to ruin my passion. And so I had already kind of given up in the sense of like, let me just get my shit together. Let me get to New York. Let me get a job. Let me get a degree that will get me a job and let me go from there. And so that's what I did. And then I got to New York and I did all of that. And I looked around and I realized that like I had spent my whole life trying to get here. And now where do I go? Like, now what do I do? I always told myself I'd figure it out when I get there. I'd figure it out. I would write when it was time. I would put my creative ambitions on the back burner. Like when it was time, I'd flip them back over. And then it was time to flip them back over and I didn't even know where to start. And I was also under this impression that I'd get here and there would be mentors and adults and people who knew what to do and who could provide guidance in that way. And like, I just realized that everyone was so consumed with not knowing what to do or, you know, how to do it. And everyone was kind of just pretending in this corporate atmosphere. Yeah. And it was really sinking for me. And so I had all this creative energy. I got this really great job at this tech company and I needed a way to put my creative energy somewhere, but to also, you know, explore if this career option could make sense for me. And for a while I really liked it and I just burnt the candle at both ends. I started figuring shit out as a way to explore my own creative endeavors. It was like I literally was about to pop and I was like, okay, well, I have to do something. And so I just kind of debuted everything I'd ever written almost all at once. Wow. And I just came out as myself. That's what it felt like, was this like coming out as Vanessa, because I'd hidden for so long under this guise of who I thought I was supposed to be, under who I thought the world needed me to be, under who I thought I had to be in order to be any type of successful. And so finally the whole curtain dropped and I kept that up for a couple of years. About a year and a half, I did my podcast every single week and I went to work and I lived this double life where I was at this tech company and between sales and engineering and crushing my sales calls and trying to climb this corporate ladder and figure out what all of these, you know, different political structures in corporate meant and how to navigate them. And then also learning how to produce a podcast and host a podcast, and then realizing that there were people on the other end who were listening, which I never expected. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I knew that that's where I wanted to be. But for so long, I sat in that space of how do I do it? Right. That's never really what's important, even though it feels like that's always the way that you have to go first. You have to figure out the logical way to do things. That's where my brain always goes, like my dad always taught me. And I had to really break away from that mentality, and something in me just like snapped eventually. I couldn't be this inauthentic version of myself doing something that I knew I wasn't supposed to do when I had created something that I knew was meant for me to pour myself into. And so I gave myself 3 months last year and I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but in 3 months I'm leaving this job and I'm going to be on this road. I don't know where this road takes me. I don't know where it leads me, but I'm giving myself 3 months. And then out of nowhere,
out during those
exactly, exactly. I got this calling to do yoga teacher training and I was like, what else am I going to do? So I went and I booked a flight to Bali. I found a yoga teacher training program and I left my job and started there. And that was about 6 months ago. And now I'm here.
Goodness,
I'm on
really?
my
That
road
was only
less
6
traveled.
months ago.
Yes.
Wow, Vanessa. Okay, there's so much to unpack with your amazing life. So first of all, going back to writing. So just listening to your podcast without knowing you personally, I could tell that you're a writer. I could tell you're a storyteller naturally. I mean, you just have a way about yourself. And I find that so interesting that you also did a pivot and you're like, all right. And your dad told you like, let's not focus on this degree. You already have those skills, and to go to business was such a smart move. I feel like I kind of did the same thing. I was a dancer growing up, and my mother was a professional dancer. My grandmother, my mom was like, listen, Stace, if you're going to do this, you have to get your degree because dancers only have a career for so long. You have to. So I started off with psychology. And then I started taking sign language classes, and I fell in love with the beauty of American Sign Language. Wow. And I ended up, that was my degree, and that's what I graduated with. But my first class, because I transferred over, my first class, I was sitting there with this deaf professor, and he was like, I don't want the deaf community. We don't want people helping us. We are not disabled. We have a culture, and we want to be our own doctors, our own therapists. And I was like, what am I doing here? This is not what I want to do. I walked over to the kinesiology department. I'm like, what do I need to do to switch? And they're like, start over. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm a dancer, and I'm getting older by the day, and I've got like less days. So I ended up sticking with deaf studies. I ended up going into personal training for 15 years kind of after that, strangely enough. And I would have used all that kinesiology training, strangely enough. But I totally understand like those pivots in life. And going back to your podcast. So what season are you currently in?
Season 3.
Amazing. That's so great. And what have you discovered with the process of like, speaking out, speaking up? What have you discovered internally?
That once you start telling the truth about who you are, about where you are, you just, magnetize people who are yearning to tell their truth. Mm-hmm. The amount of messages that I get that are just like, I don't know how you know exactly what I'm going through. And I'm like, well, it's just what I'm going through. And it's also what you're going through. And we're all going through the same things. We just don't talk about it. Yes. We're just not communicating about it. Mm-hmm. And also that like it's made me more honest, and it's made me radically honest with myself in a way that I can't look away from, which like self-awareness is a curse and it's a blessing in that way, because you obviously have the tools to change, but it also is just like this constant voice of action. Like, you must take action. You must go forward. There is no turning back. Once you go forward, there is no turning back. So those are the biggest lessons I've learned, but there's so many.
Yeah, that I feel the same exact way. I do feel like when I came onto this podcasting life, I'm like, what I'm talking about is nothing new, but it's not really talked about very often. And I wish I had something like this when I was going through like breast cancer, when I was going through certain things that people really don't talk about. And so I find that to be the same as well. I love that. You're 25, correct?
Mm-hmm. I just turned 25.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
25, a quarter of a century. It's a big one. So I'm turning 45 this year. So I've got 20 years on you. Has anyone ever told you that you're an old soul? Have you ever heard that?
I've heard it a couple of times. Yeah.
I believe you're an old soul. You've got a lot of wisdom for just being on this earth for 25 years. I'm almost 45. I'm still figuring shit out. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly growing, expanding my mind. I feel like figuring shit out is something that we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives. I don't know. Do you feel like anyone has it figured out at like this point?
No, no, I don't. That's the point of figuring shit out. Yes. Is that like we are going to be figuring shit out for the rest of our lives. You solve one problem and inevitably you have another one and you get to where you want to go, and then you're like, what's next? And there's always going to be something else, like always. And I think that when I spent my whole life trying to get somewhere and then I got there, it was that light bulb or that light within me, that like grand realization of, oh, so I was lied to, like I was sold this and no one knows what they're doing. So, I mean, and I talk to my parents now and I see them in such a different way as I grow older. Like I have so much more compassion for them with every year I have more and more compassion, just because I know like it is their first time being human as well. And, my mom, for instance, like I just feel like daughters and mothers have that connection, that deep knowing within one another. Absolutely. Of just like, I've been you. Either she's been me or I will be her. And it's her first time being in her 50s. Like how scary that must be, or how, how much of a life change that must be. And we look at our parents, we look at elders and say, no one knows. Everyone's figuring it out. I think that's just a beautiful thing to embrace.
It is. And I love that that's the premise of your podcast, because I do believe that even though you say like you're helping people in their 20s, you're helping people all throughout, because no one has it figured out. And if they say that they do, they're lying. I really believe that. We always have something to figure out. I think it's beautiful when you can find your purpose and really live into it and really connect with your most authentic self, to be honest. It's kind of what I'm always gravitating to is what can I do in my daily life to connect to my most authentic self? And you spoke about, you kind of walked through fear to get to where you are. You said you were an introvert, like you were shy. Going on a platform like this, that's a really big deal, but you didn't let the fear stop you. And that's something that I'm always trying to focus on is always come from love, not fear. Because think about all of everything we would miss out on if we were living in fear. So what do you feel like, what tools helped push you through the fear?
I've been thinking about this so deeply because the fear like doesn't go away. Is you're always figuring shit out. So, once you conquer one thing, there's another thing. And life, I think, is just a mix of those expansions and then contractions because you maybe step a little bit too far out of your comfort zone and you realize, oh, that was too much. But really, it was just this feeling of I could be scared to leave where I am, or I could be more scared to be exactly where I am 1 year from now.
Absolutely.
That was the biggest thing. My boyfriend had said to me, like, Vanessa, it's not about what's on the other side of this door. That is not what is scary. What is scary is being where you are 1 year from now, like looking over the edge of this cliff, wondering what happens when you leap. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Like, you are right. And I try to really frame that in everything that is new for me, that's terrifying. And the unknown is just, it's a dark path that we have to navigate and find our own light through. Always will be. So the best that you can do is be honest about it and be like, hey, I don't know where to start. Even if you're just telling that to ChatGPT, tell someone.
I feel like that's such a common theme in the human experience is like living in the unknown, because that's something that we all do every single day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't even really think about the fact that every day is an unconquered field.
Exactly. So that's beautiful. I love that. Speaking of like stepping into the unknown. So 6 months ago, you bought a ticket and you went to Bali, which is like, I'm so impressed with that. I would love to go to Bali. That's just such a dream. And you went into yoga teacher training. How long were you there for?
I was in Bali for 2 months. I was at yoga teacher training for 3 weeks.
What was your experience like?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, it's one of those things where if you feel you have to go to Bali, you just said that you have to go to Bali. It's that type of place that calls you there for a reason. There is no coincidence about going. It was terrifying. It was so scary. I had never done that much travel by myself. And it brought up every fear I had, every limiting belief I had, every assumption about other people that I had in terms of them being a threat to me or not. Everything was just like right on the surface. And of course, I was a solo female traveler. Like those are, you need to be careful, that type of thing. But the fear that was living in my body for so long here in New York, that lives in my body on a day-to-day basis, navigating this city, navigating what safety means for a woman, it was like so rampant. And I felt so dysregulated when I first got there. But it was this like sense of being at the very top of an inhale and then slowly learning how to just exhale. And throughout my time there, I just learned so much more about, my body, because I was in yoga teacher training, and friendship and what that means too, because I was in this space of 29 women and we were all so supportive of each other, and it was so connected, and it was just such a beautiful emotional experience for everyone. And I went there with this intention to just like somatically heal and rest. I wanted a schedule. I wanted meals. I wanted everything done for me. I didn't want to have to worry about anything. I felt like I had been worrying about everything for like 24 years, and I just wanted a month in the jungle. Like that's what I had dreamed about for so long when I was in my job. I was like, wouldn't it be nice to just rest? Like I just want to sleep. And it was the most loving thing I could have done for myself. And it has changed how I look at life. Just seeing the other side of the world will do that. And I'm still integrating a lot of the lessons that I experienced there, but my heart like really cracked open in a new way. in Bali.
I love that. That's so cool. Have you heard of the blue zones of the world? Are you familiar with that
Yes.
at all? Okay,
Yeah.
so there's none in Bali yet, but I do love taking away like these different communities around the world where people are living the longest, healthiest, happiest lives, and what are they doing, and what are like the common denominators. So, what do you think in Bali? Like, what do you think the community there is doing right that we should be doing in America?
They're a community. Because, what's really interesting and what opened my eyes so much is that I think a lot of the West will look at Bali and say, oh, it's a place of like health and there's a lot of healthy people there and it's a place that has a lot of retreats and the food must be amazing, but you forget that it's a third world country. And I
Right,
went
right.
there and there was just this stark dichotomy of the westernization and the gentrification of it amidst the locals and the Balinese culture and this heritage and this true tradition that had been there for thousands of years before anyone knew what Bali was. The eat, pray, love, if you will, before
Yes.
Bali was really westernized. And there's a real stark contrast now because it's so clear, like, what's being bought up and renovated and what is obviously authentic to
Yeah.
the country. And I just really saw such a kindness. Like, it didn't matter that so many of these people, these locals, had no money, had nothing, were living all together in these little huts on the side of the road while Westerners come in and buy things and don't even blink an eye at the luxurious places they're able to stay because they can afford it because it's so cheap there. They are so kind. They want people to know about their culture. They want to give it. They take care of their island on this spiritual way. They light incense and give offerings to the gods 3 times a day. They're so open and their heart is so open, like as a whole, if I can speak for the people of Bali. And what was so beautiful there was that that was what let me drop my shoulders a little bit. I was like, I don't need to fear being here. Like, I felt very taken care of there. And there was just such a beautiful kindness. And the way that they cared for one another was so evident too. They prioritized community, they prioritized ceremony, and they prioritized living, and none of them looked like they wanted any more. Of course, they're all struggling in some way and they're all working really hard, but they do so thanklessly almost and with a smile on their faces. And I never saw any of them not have one. And that was so apparent to me, especially living in New York. Like, you go and get a coffee and like, there's the people who give you the coffee hate you. Like, there's just so much hate, and there's such a sadness in people, and there's such a darkness in this like reality that we're facing every day, and also the reality of the fact that we all are aware of it, which is, I think, a totally different thing than generations before had been in contact with. I think the internet has given us this pervasive knowing that maybe the world is ending. And I feel that in New York, in service workers and in just most people generally, there's just this deep apathy and non-care for others on a general level. And my heart warms when I see someone give up their seat for an old person, because I'm like, okay, this still exists. Like, we still care for each other. But Bali, everywhere I went that I could see locals, they are connected to one another and they treat each other as family. They're not against one another. And they really do such an honorable job at living and respecting their life, meaning that if they work a job that they probably don't like, they do so honorably and they do so with presence. And that was something that like deeply, deeply touched me and made me realize, how ungrateful I think as a society we are, and what the illusion of wanting more all the time will do to you.
That's huge. I think that is the biggest missing piece in America, honestly. We're always saying if we have X, Y, and Z, then we'll be happy. Where it's really like when you're sitting in gratitude for everything that you have, that's when you're really going to be happy. It doesn't matter about all these externals. So I have something that is really near and dear to my heart. They're my non-negotiables. They're kind of like my pillars of health and happiness that I teach. So for instance, for me, it's eating a plant-based diet, exercise daily, meditation daily. Community is really huge in my non-negotiables, as well as like a growth mindset, always learning, always growing. What are your non-negotiables?
That is such a great question. I don't think I've asked myself that question. Lately, and since I've been on this road less traveled and really been prioritizing my alignment over everything, because what I do now from a creative standpoint has to come from this like authentic, heart-centered place. And so
Right.
to exist there all the time when you've lived your whole life with like a closed heart because you were trying to defend or protect is it's an inside job. So right now my non-negotiables are taking care of my body and being a friend to my body in a brand new way. And as a 25-year-old who's gone through the ups and downs of social media, we are at war with ourselves all the time. I am no different in, you know, the criticisms that we women are under the microscope of all the time and projecting that inwards at myself. And so lately I've been really trying to practice this being a friend to my body, taking care of my body, not for any desire for more, not for any desire to look a certain way, but because I'm 25, I'm not going to be 25 forever, and I want to live and I want to be able to move, and I'm going to be so grateful if I am grateful now for what I have in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So that's a big non-negotiable in my life. Two is a relationship with spirit, a relationship with whatever God you want to call it. I call it God because to me that's what it is, but just this open dialogue with something greater, something more knowing, and a deep connection to all of my ancestors and family that have passed as well. I try to keep that in my heart every day and remind myself that I'm here and that if I'm here there must be a reason, and I'm meant to break some type of cycle, and so all I need to do is just keep going. And then as well, just a deep self-evaluation and interconnection to myself on like a weekly basis. I really, really try to check in and say, are my habits serving me? Is my life serving me? What do I need more of? What am I not facing? I really try to look underneath what I am doing on a day-to-day basis and ask myself the deeper questions. And I do that weekly. I check in weekly. I look at all my habits and what I did and all of those things. And I say, okay, like, how do we do? Like, did we do what we set out to do, or did we fall from grace? What did we need that we didn't get? And so on a very high level, those would be my non-negotiables for living a good life right
Huge.
now.
Well,
Yeah.
number one, you're accountable to yourself, which is really rare. Like people hire people like me for accountability. The fact that you can do that on your own and have these like weekly check-ins with yourself is amazing. Like just know that's a really, really rare gift that you have. You talked about having like kind of like a closed heart. Have you heard of like the emotion code, and are you familiar with Reiki at all? No?
Well,
I
I'm familiar with Reiki, but tell me everything.
Okay, so I just finished a book called The Emotion Code, and it's about heart walls, and it's about uncovering emotions that get trapped in your body. So sometimes we have self-limiting beliefs because of experiences. It could have been in the womb, it could have been in childhood, it could have been adulthood that kind of stick to us. And so it talks about how to release these traumas. And I'm a Reiki master practitioner, and that I started that journey in my healing from breast cancer journey. And I really dove deep into that quickly. And Reiki, just with energy, is just so amazing for healing at like an ultimate level. I noticed your necklace, 222. Those are some angel numbers. What does that mean to you?
222 was a number I started seeing a lot when I first moved to New York City. And during that year, I had already had a bit of a spiritual awakening and started to really embrace spirit in my life. And at that point, I was still like figuring shit out in like the most nascent way I could. And I started to feel my grandpa, who had passed several years before. And I didn't realize that I was feeling him. I just kept thinking about him all the time. And it was so random because I hadn't thought about him for a while, but he was just pop into my head and I would just like feel his presence and I would think about him and dream about him. And I didn't put it together until a couple of months down the road. I was doing this guided meditation and I just like felt him come to me so profoundly. And when I'd opened my eyes, it was 2:22 p.m. And so it was kind of just like my connection to him, and that spurred another spiritual awakening that I wasn't really prepared for, in just knowing that there were energies that could be accessed. Before it was just like a grounded, let me meditate and journal and know that my life is meant for something. And then it became, oh, like we're in this dimensional reality that has like many layers to it. And I don't know how, but I can feel things and I can hear and I can see things in a deeper way. And it was just a really special time in my life. So that's what it means to me. It's a reminder of that.
That's amazing. So for our listeners, everyone can see these things. You just have to open up your mind and your heart to it. That's something, and I've had the same experiences, especially in my recovery journey, is like opening your eyes to the signs of the universe. It's just amazing. Once you get to that place where you allow it in, you see it all the time.
Yeah.
I just love that. They are everywhere. That's so amazing. You know, you said something in one of your podcasts, and it stuck with me. It says, commitment is self-respect. Consistency is self-love. I love that quote from you. That's really, really impactful. What got you to that place of discovery?
Well, this is something I've really been embracing in the last few months because I do not have a boss anymore. I'm not reporting to anyone. And I am lucky that I was this like very hyper independent, hyper focused, like type A Virgo rising that needed to keep my lists, needed to check them off. I have lists from when I was like 5 years old in my 5-year-old journals. I would just like make lists just to do things. Like I love to be a doer. But then, you know, I quit my job and suddenly I realized that I had functioned under this pressure, and it was almost like this people-pleasing pressure. Like it wasn't necessarily that I really, really cared about my work or I was showing up for me, but it was because I was accountable to someone and someone was counting on me. And I had always learned that if I had a deadline or if I had something to do or if there was like a meeting to be had, like it would light a fire under my ass and I would do it. And then when I quit my job, I kind of found myself in this in-between where I couldn't move. Like I couldn't do anything. I was just like frozen. And it was a really odd period of time because I was this chronic doer. What happened? I didn't really understand it. And I just looked a bit deeper and I started to realize like this freeze was coming from this place of not feeling like I was worthy enough to show up for in some way. There was still part of me that was doing it for other people because there were people who were listening at the end of it, or because there was, you know, the fact that I said that I would do it. And if I didn't do it, then that would cause so much shame inside of me. Instead of, I said that I would do it because I knew that it would be good for me and I love myself, so I'm going to do it. And so it took a real reframing of that. And so back in December, I started to just say to myself, commitment is self-respect and I respect myself. And so I'm going to do this because I respect myself, and consistency is love. And it took away this need to be so disciplined and put this like hard wire on myself of you need to do this to be someone, and instead say, no, I'm doing this because I love myself. I'm doing this because it is good for me and because I show up. Because I show up for me. And so it reframed everything. And I've been functioning under that for the last few months. And it's changed a lot for me because when I sit down to do something I don't want to do, it's like I am my own boss. There is like a boss at the end of it that's like, hello.
Yes.
Yeah. We love you. Are you coming?
Right.
Are you coming to say hi?
Amazing. If you don't mind, I'm going to keep that and share that quote with clients of mine because that's what I teach. I mean, my podcast is called Never Miss a Monday because I believe in order to set your week up on the right foot, you got to hit X, Y, and Z on Monday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the rest of your week is awesome, right?
Yes.
So but to put in that mindset of like, no, this is hitting all these things, exercising, eating well. That's a form of self-care and self-love. Is really what it is. So shifting that mindset, which you do so beautifully, is wonderful, Vanessa. I just look up to you so much with that. You haven't let the city harden you even a little bit. So don't ever let that happen. You're doing amazing. I'm sure it is. I'm sure you got to practice.
I walk around really grumpy and then I realize like, what am I doing?
Well, you are human and you have the power to snap back into the self-love component, which is amazing. What's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, this is actually interesting and I've never even really shared this. So, and I just feel called to share it now, especially because of the work that you do. So in my community, which I have a community of people who listen to Figuring Shit Out and want more resources and meditations, that type of thing, just like a connected space. And there is a girl in my community who had been following it since I had launched it, and had been following the podcast since I started. So to think that someone had been listening to the podcast for almost 2 years now, since the very beginning, it's so wild to me, because it's like you do develop a relationship, like it's almost a parasocial relationship with people who you listen to. And so I guess she had felt over this long period of time that she trusted me because I'm in her ears every week. But, for me, I'm like, we've only spoken a few times. She reached out to me and was basically like, I know that you are looking for opportunities to kind of expand things beyond the podcast. I don't know if this is something you'd be interested in, but would you want to talk to me once a week? Like, I need some personalized guidance and help. And at first I contracted really hard, and I was like, I don't really know about this. I've never thought of myself as any type of coach or guide or anything. And I was just like, I'd really have to think about it. And I started to talk to her, and I really, really liked her, and I felt very aligned to her. And I was just like, okay, I would love to help her. I think I can really help her and give her some type of framework, because really she was just looking for frameworks and accountability, and she needed to hear it from someone who she'd been hearing it for, but more directly catered to her. And so I found myself creating this personalized 4-week program for her, personalized podcast episodes, meditations, all of these assignments and things, and meeting with her twice a week, and really just focusing on what she needed for transformation, and knowing exactly what to do, and developing this beautiful relationship with this person who is truly such an incredible person. And I've seen her be so receptive and transform in such a beautiful way. And it has challenged me so much, because I've never been I want to coach or lead or guide in any grander way than just workshops or on a bigger level like a podcast. But something has cracked in me where I'm no, I think that I'm meant to really help people in this personalized way, whether it's through smaller groups or whether it's through a one-on-one thing like this. If it is aligned, clearly it literally came to me and found me. And so I've discovered so much about myself over those last 4 weeks. So I am in the process of creating programs that will feel aligned to me and will allow people to be guided in their road less traveled. And then as well, do this one-on-one. I'll only do one at a time because it's so intense. And I have really, really just discovered such a love for it. So that's what I'm doing next. And I'm going to be learning a lot more through the process so that I can teach and guide and, use the skills that I've learned in yoga teacher training to infuse into it. But it's very new. I'm a little scared, but that's what's next for me.
That's amazing. I absolutely, the universe really brought that to you, which is such a gift, and you're like, okay, let's say yes to that. And look at this. I think you have a lot of light to bring into this world. And thank you for sharing it. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you?
You can find me at my podcast, Figuring Shit Out. The shit has an exclamation point for the I. And my Instagram is 222VGF. It will also take you to my podcast Instagram, and everything you'll need from there you'll find.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to keep on listening to your podcast and watch you grow. And I'm honored to have you on the pod today, Vanessa. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Stacey. I really, really loved this talk.
Me too. Take care. I'll see you soon.